President Donald Trump may be pushing Americans further apart, but he's brought Canadians closer together. In a dynamic likely to be familiar to Americans, Canada had become increasingly polarized in recent years, with voters poised to replace the longtime Liberal government with a Conservative party capitalizing on their worries about inflation and immigration. But since Trump returned to office, Canadians' top concern has shifted to relations with the United States, as he imposed 25% tariffs on Canadian imports and made joking but maybe not comments about making their country the 51st U.S. state. The steady flow of threats and insults from Trump has shocked and confused Canadians, completely upended their upcoming election, and inspired a newfound patriotism in a country that isn't known for being showy about that kind of thing. It's been a head-spinning turn of events for those who are struggling to understand how the U.S. could turn on Canada so quickly. The degree of disappointment and disillusionment is very high, said Jonathan Malloy, a political science professor at Carleton University in Ottawa, the Canadian capital. There is also intense anger. The country is ringing with calls to buy Canadian, with U.S. liquor pulled from shelves and Canadian products prominently marked with maple leaf signs in grocery stores. Canadians are booing the U.S. national anthem at hockey games, canceling trips to the U.S. and asking for Canadianos instead of Americanos at coffee shops. The hostility extends to homegrown Trump supporters such as Canadian hockey legend Wayne Gretzky, who was at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort on election night and attended his inauguration. This week, viral photos from a Toronto liquor store showed labels under Gretzky's wine range altered to include descriptions such as weak and backstabbery. Former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien said Trump had united us as never before. I think I will propose him for the Order of Canada, the country's highest civilian honor, Chrétien joked as the governing Liberal Party met in Ottawa last weekend to elect a successor to Canada's leader of almost a decade, the highly unpopular Justin Trudeau. Experts say the man they overwhelmingly chose, Mark Carney, may be uniquely positioned to push back against Trump's aggression, with a background in finance and crisis management that includes running the Bank of Canada after the 2008 global financial crisis and the Bank of England during the Brexit process. Like Trump, Carney, who took office as Prime Minister on Friday, spent much of his life in the private sector and had never held elected office before becoming his country's leader. He's been sort of the global elite all his life, Malloy said. Normally, that's not really the route for success for a rookie politician, but these are unusual times. Only a few months ago, the Liberals under Trudeau were looking like absolute toast in the next Canadian election, which is required to take place by October of this year, Malloy said. With his approval rating already at an all-time low, Trudeau's problems were only compounded by Trump's tariff threats, which began shortly after he was elected in November. Internal disagreement over how to respond to those threats created turmoil among the Liberals, with Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland's scathing resignation letter in December ultimately forcing Trudeau to announce he would step down. It seemed that almost certain the Liberals would be thrashed in the next election by the Conservative Party, led by Pierre Poilievre. Poilievre, whose style has been described as Trump-light, had embraced the populist wing of his party, expressing support for truckers who paralyzed Ottawa with anti-vaccine protests in Tweetou. Among his supporters was Elon Musk. Then Trump happened. On his first day in office, Trump announced a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico, two of the biggest U.S. trading partners. Those tariffs were paused for a month before going into effect on March 4th. Markets immediately began convulsing, and in the days that followed, Trump exempted more than a third of goods coming from Canada until April 2nd. Trump said he was imposing the tariffs on Canada and Mexico because of their role in the U.S. fentanyl crisis and illegal immigration, mystifying Canadians who point to the U.S. government's own data showing that Canada is responsible for less than 1% of the fentanyl and undocumented migrants coming across the northern and southern U.S. borders. Canada is also subject to the 25% U.S. tariff on steel and aluminum imports that took effect globally on Wednesday. Ottawa responded to those tariffs with its own levies on some $21 billion worth of U.S. goods, and it has also requested a dispute consultation at the World Trade Organization. Alongside the tariffs, Trump has repeatedly referred to Trudeau as the governor of Canada, which with 40 million people has about the same population as California. Trump's derision continued on Thursday, even as his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, made his first official trip to Canada for a meeting of top diplomats from the Group of Seven industrialized democracies. To be honest with you, Canada only works as a state, Trump said from the Oval Office. Asked about the issue on Friday, Rubio said it had not come up at the G7 meeting, but that there was a disagreement between Trump's position and the position of the Canadian government. Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly said she told Rubio that Canada's sovereignty is not up to debate. "You're in our country, you respect our people. Period," she said at a news conference after the meeting in Montbey, Quebec. Fueled by anger at Trump, Canadians have expressed growing support for the Liberals in the upcoming election, almost entirely closing the gap with the Conservatives in a matter of weeks. The Conservatives, which had a lead of almost 20 points a month ago, are now ahead by only 1 percentage point, the Canadian polling firm Nano said this week. The Liberals have basically been resurrected from the dead because of the crisis Trump created, Malloy said. As Carney took office on Friday, he rejected Trump's statehood proposal, saying, "America is not Canada. We will never, ever, in any way, shape, or form be part of the United States," Carney, who turns 60 on Sunday, said after being sworn in. Though Carney is a novice politician, that could work in his favor, said Maite Gonzalez-Latorre, a program assistant at the Atlantic Council in Washington, who is from Edmonton, Alberta. Mark Carney has experience in the UK, he has experience in Canada, but he also has private sector experience, Gonzalez-Latorre said, which I think will give him an advantage, especially when it comes to tariffs and speaking with Trump directly. Carney's top concerns for the moment, she said, are how to deal with Trump and how the U.S. tariffs are going to affect Canadians. His next moves and Trump's response to them will influence when Carney calls the election, which could still end in victory for the Conservatives. As with so many of Trump's policies and actions, Malloy said, it remains unclear what exactly he is trying to achieve with his antagonism toward Canada. His actions may have sidelined a potential ally in Poilievre, who would have been a relatively supportive leader, Malloy said. And though he took down Trudeau, Trump also revived the fortunes of Trudeau's party, which is staunchly opposed to his policies. What is Mr. Trump's endgame other than chaos? And what's the point, Malloy said? Because so far, he's only doing things that hurt his interests and the interests of the United States.